I'm Jim Monaghan, the content coordinator for Red Sox Life, and along with Ahaan and Eric, welcome to another Red Sox Zoom Roundtable discussion. A little bit of a wrap-up of the 2021 season, which in some ways was gloriously magnificent, and well, at the end, it wasn't exactly what we wanted. Eric, we were talking just before we came on live here, and you said you were looking at the free agent list. What are your initial thoughts when you look at that list?
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what we were talking about. It's a pretty long list of guys that there's one or two you want to have come back, I think. There's only one on there, JD Martinez. He's got a player option, which he's most likely going to take. I don't think he's going to want to run out on the open market. And for the rest, it's up to the Red Sox, and there's no way they're going to pay Garrett Richards $10 million again. There's no way they're going to pay Perez $6 million again. It's just not going to happen. So it's going to be quite a flush of players leaving, I think. And I was also just reading up a little bit. I think they're sitting at 180 million for 2022, like where they're roughly at, or this year. 2021, and I think it's going to be 160 starting. Then they have to deal with all the openings they have. So they're in a pretty good spot to decide what they want to do. I also had to kind of laugh when they interviewed Schwarber and said, yeah, I wouldn't mind coming back. Yeah, no, I think JD, JD takes his, I think JD takes, it's not that I don't want him back, but there's no spot. So you're basically having a second JD and you already don't really have a spot in the field for him. And if you have to juggle those two, I think Dahlbeck stays at first base. That's kind of it. But it's just kind of sad to see this big list. There's going to be a pretty big flush, especially in the pitching and in the bullpen.
Yeah, I agree. Two of the players that you just mentioned, Richards and Perez, both have team options, and the third with the team option is Christian Vasquez. Ahaan, of those three, who comes back?
I don't know if you knew that I was going to bring up Christian Vasquez, but that was a perfect segue. No. That was a perfect segue. I don't know if I'm as confident as Eric is that JD will opt in. I don't think it's a lock. And I do think we're keeping one of JD and Kyle, and depending on what JD does, we'll know who it is. But the number one guy that I'm afraid will come back to the team and don't want him back. Thank you for your services in 2018, 2019. Christian Vasquez, he hurt the team a lot just by being there at catcher. He had insane splits. I think we talked about this before, insane splits with Evaldi, with Nick Pivetta. He ranks as statistically one of the worst game calling catchers in baseball. So if he's not going to hit, thank you very much for your services. Goodbye. Adam Ottavino, another free agent. He was a helpful piece to have for depth, but I think it's time we watch him on another team. Hansel Robles was kind of nasty at the end of the season, which was unexpected for me. I thought that was just, a move to make a move kind of trade. And, I was wrong. He was a big reason we got into the playoffs. But of course, I think we also see him on another team. Eduardo Rodriguez is the most interesting one to me. I think statistically, Eduardo Rodriguez was clearly getting unlucky in the beginning of the season. And a lot of that has to do with the defense. Infield defense has to be one of the priorities on this team. If you see why the Yankees kind of got booted, kind of did not have any momentum heading into the playoffs, their biggest problem was infield defense. Our biggest problem, arguably, was the infield defense. So I think that's an area we need to improve. And the guy that affects the most is Eduardo Rodriguez. So I think if we improve the infield defense, I would want him back. And it's just a matter of what the cost would be. And that's a little deeper of a thought experiment, which we can brainstorm in the future.
Eduardo Rodriguez, one of the players on the Red Sox 2021 roster who is an unrestricted free agent. Eric, what are your thoughts on whether or not he comes back?
I would like to see him come back. I'm not really sure what they're going to do with that. I think there's a lot of potential there. You have Sale, you have Eovaldi, and then him. So I like that 1, 2, 3. It just fell off after him so bad so quickly that he got exposed a little bit too in that. And talking about the defensive errors, I don't really see Rodriguez as a ground ball pitcher. But I was looking up quickly before we started here, and Bogarts had 9 errors over, I think, 130 some games. Dahlbeck 11 at first base, Devers 22 at third base. I don't know if you remember the postseason. There was a couple of really awful ones in there.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not talking about, I'm not looking at the Red Sox total errors for the season because there was a couple 2-week period there where we were basically watching a AA team when the COVID went through, and 2 in the park home runs and garbage like that. It's not what you expect from a major league team. But I do think that they're going to try to bring Rodriguez back. It kind of depends upon if they're going to want to spend that much on him. He made 8.3 last year. I'm not really sure what they're going to do with that. It's going to depend upon how much he thinks he's worth, right?
One of the players who really caught fire for the Red Sox, and you saw it especially in the postseason in the playoffs, was Kike Hernandez. Ahaan, did the Red Sox catch lightning in a bottle with Kike, or was this a case, as Bloom and Alex Cora said, of when this kid plays every day, you're going to see something special? Which Kike Hernandez do you think it is?
I think it's clearly he's an everyday player, and he's a very good everyday player. I think that contract that we got for him was a steal. He performed like a $15 million player on a $7 million contract. And if you can hit playoff pitching, which he's proven to do every single season of his career, that's an added asset that is rare to come by. There are many great players, but if you're a playoff team and you have a top of the order bat that can't hit playoff pitching, you're at a disadvantage. And I think that is a real thing, not being able to hit playoff pitching. And Kike Hernandez hits everybody in the playoffs. So I think his contract is a steal. I believe he gets more money when he becomes a free agent next. I think this was probably the best contract that Chaim Bloom has given out so far in his Red Sox career. We're going to see Kike, I think, even better next year now that he is more familiarized with the leadoff role.
I would really like to see him playing at one position, right? Leave him in center field. I don't want to see him bouncing all over the place anymore. That's too distracting. He'll be so much more effective out there.
Well, that's one of the things, though, that Chaim Bloom, when he was with Tampa, one of the things that they did is they had guys who were versatile, who could play multiple positions. And I want to say Kike played at least 4, if not 5. Did he play all 3 outfield positions? And I think he played shortstop as well as second base. So we know he's got the chops to play multiple positions, but that's always been one of his calling cards. Chaim Bloom is get guys who are athletic and get guys who can play multiple positions. And I loved Hernandez. I thought, no matter where he was, you knew you were getting a pretty solid player out there. But I could see him playing multiple positions again in 2022.
For reference on that, he played center field, second, and then 8 games at shortstop.
Okay. Eric, what are your thoughts on Hunter Renfroe, who kind of disappeared towards the end of the playoffs there?
Well, I mean, I think I hope we're gonna find out a little bit more about what the condition the team was in towards the end there. I'm sure there was something going on with him. I'm sure there was something going on with Devers in his arm still with the swing. He was, it just didn't look like Devers. That up and down falling off, I mean, it was so extreme with Renfroe. There's got to be something behind that. Mm-hmm. That just wasn't him. He never had a dip like that during the season that was so dramatic. And it's not like the pitching went off the charts there at the end. I mean, I feel like the Red Sox made the starters look a lot better than they were. If you were listening to that last game, they were saying how, he's throwing so much harder and this is wonderful and oh my, but they were catching up to those pitches. Those pitches were not being like smoked past all the Red Sox guys. They were just hitting a lot of ground balls, right? And I think Renfroe is I think he's going to be just fine. I mean, give him a chance to rest up and come back. He's going to be just fine. You see what he can do, so make sure he gets a chance to do it.
Now let's talk about Chris Sale for a minute. In his final appearance, he hit 98 a number of times, and there were moments in that game where you look and you go, this is the Chris Sale that we've come to know and love. Aggressive, the way he charged off the mound after those strikeouts at the end, and we couldn't come back. The Red Sox weren't able to come back with the offense and put a couple of runs up. Ahaan, I'll ask you, the 2020 season of Chris Sale in review, how much of that do you think was him coming back from Tommy John surgery? How much do you think might possibly be a sign that he's starting to fall off a little bit?
I don't think he's falling off at all. I think the few poor outings we saw from him can be attributed, one, to coming back from Tommy John surgery. I think his velocity was the highest variance it has been his entire career. makes sense coming back, recovering from surgery. He was still, his strikeout peripherals were there most of his starts, which is kind of ridiculous for somebody coming back off Tommy John. You can't take for granted somebody coming back like on time, coming back in the middle of the season, and then doing almost as well as he did when he left. I'll make the call right now. Of course, Sale wins the 2022 AL Cy Young Award. He's been close many times. He's been close many times, and he's a guy that pitches off of anger, and there's anger from the way this season ended. So he's going to carry that over to 2022.
Eric, through most of Ahaan's comments just now, I saw you nodding your head. You stopped nodding when he got to the 2022 Cy Young Award. What are your thoughts on Chris Sale?
Well, we all know he loves to place a bet, right? So I'm like, okay, get those odds in now, right? I think we saw exactly what he said. We saw somebody that was struggling a little bit with feel, a little bit with getting the sharp and the crispness on his slider just wasn't there, right? You saw him pretty much his last outing. I don't know how many sliders he threw. I forgot to look that back up, but it wasn't many, right? Which is like his big wipeout pitch, and you want to see that thing biting from the left batter's box all the way down to the right back foot, right? And I was kind of missing that. Parallel with that, we haven't really touched on it, but I would love to see Houck slide in there too. Quit whining about the third time through the rotation and give the dude a chance to go the third time through the rotation in the regular season. You know what I mean? He's proven plenty of times he can get you through 3-4 innings without a problem. He's got the same kind of strikeout stuff that Sale does. Let's go, man. You got a whole season now to or off season to work on his splitter or whatever they consider his last pitch. Come on, get on that. Who doesn't want to watch left-handed, right-handed versions 2 days after each other? Come on.
Houck and Whitlock, I think, are two of the bright spots that we saw this season. And Ahaan, your thoughts on Garrett Whitlock, starter or in the bullpen next year?
First off, I'll just comment on the Tanner thing. I was going to bring up basically what Eric brought up, that I do expect Houck to develop that splitter or whatever you want to call it pitch, and that should help him go deeper into games. I think based on what he had this season, I think people complaining that he didn't go third time through the order at all this season, I think the complaints are a little bit unjustified. He hasn't proven yet that he can do it. And so Cora had to play the cards that were dealt to him. And I think he was used just fine this season. But this offseason, we have to see that pitch develop so that he can go 3 times through the order, because we need that. Whitlock, I think the popular thing to say nowadays is put him in the rotation. But I like Whitlock cleaning up deep messes. I like him throwing 98 with sometimes filthy changeup, sometimes a straight fastball, sometimes a sinker. I like the fact that he can throw like 2.5 pitches and just clean up messes. He's got ice in his veins. I like him as a reliever. I don't think you should mess with something this good. Rookie of the year candidate. He's not going to win it, obviously. There are a lot of good rookies, but as a reliever, Rule 5 draft pick, I like him as a reliever. I think it's playing with a lot to move him as a starter.
I'm looking at your rivalry hat, Yankees and Red Sox. There was a deliciousness to him, to Whitlock, closing the Yankees out of the 2021 season. I loved it. And just to touch on the Yankees for a minute, I am thrilled, absolutely thrilled. Aaron Boone is back for 3 more and a team option for 4. Yes, bring that on, baby. I am thrilled to have that happening. Let's bring up the pink elephant in the bullpen, or the room, as the case may be, whichever. And that's Matt Barnes. Talk about a guy who went from one level to the other in a heartbeat. Eric, what are your thoughts on Matt Barnes going forward?
I feel like he was just fine as the closer through the first part of the season, but he had a streak there where he was heavily used. He was getting leaned on a little bit too hard. I don't feel like he got enough rest and really never got a chance to come back from that. And they kind of didn't trust him after that. And with someone like Whitlock, I was going to say we should add him to the closer discussion as far as I'm concerned. Give him a shot somewhere when it's not high leverage and see how he does, right? Or not high leverage, but I mean, not late in the season. Mm-hmm. It's very, very possible that he could float into something like that. I don't think Matt Barnes he's going to be a rocket coming out again next year, right? So I'm pretty sure he's going to have a shot at closer again. I think maybe they should just look a little bit closer about how they use him, right? There was just way too many stuff in the beginning where they were leaning on him day after day or one day rest. And that takes its toll. And you saw him, they basically put him on the shelf for a while, right? Just gave him little easy innings off every once in a while. It's like his bullpen sessions. So I think, yeah, that's my impression anyway. It felt like, something with the arm just because it was overused.
There are two names I want to bring up in the minors, actually three. Jeter Downs, I'm not quite sure he's ready yet. Jay Groom, who showed some really strong signs this year as a pitcher. And then Tristan Casas, the first baseman who spent all year in the minors and was up with the Olympic team for a while and really put on quite a show. Ahaan, of those three, which one, if any of them, do you think has an impact on the 2022 season?
Tristan Casas, one, because of talent, and two, because of possible need. I think we've learned that Bobby Dahlbeck, his ceiling is really, really good. And as I like to remind Yankees fans, much better than Anthony Rizzo. But his floor is also there. His strikeout rates are very high. Hunter Renfroe was in a big slump at the worst possible time, and Bobby Dahlbeck couldn't sniff the starting lineup. Somebody asked Cora, is the starting lineup going to change? And he's like, no, because Bobby Dahlbeck is not quite, that kind of playoff hitter yet. So because of need, I think instead of addressing the kind of weird free agent market at first base this season, I think we see Tristan Casas hopefully not get rushed, but make his first appearance in the big leagues in 2022.
And Eric, I'll ask you the same question regarding those three players.
I think we'll see Jeter Downs. I don't think the pitch is going to be ready yet. I think they're going to let him ripen a little bit down there still. Unless there's some kind of weird injury or whatever at first base, then maybe you see someone be brought up a little bit quicker. But I think Jeter Downs, I think he's already had an appearance, hasn't he, up at the top level? I'm not really
sure.
No,
I don't think so, not yet.
Guys show up for one or two games, but yeah, so I think he's probably the next one you're going to see, because second base is a bit of a question mark, right? I know we like to think Arroyo is the solution, or whoever they decide, Martinez, or what was his name? I forget the guy that took off there at the end.
Jose Iglesias,
right?
You had Iglesias come back, and yeah. I could see Iglesias sticking around next year. I think he'd be a nice.
Yeah, I was going to mention that too. I don't know if you could convince him to take a minor league deal and whisper in his ear that you're the first one we're looking at if we need you, kind of thing. I don't know if he'd take something like that. But he was having a great time. I thought it was really cool that they had him with the team the whole time in the postseason, even though he wasn't allowed to play. So he was the cart pusher when they hit the dingers. He was right there at the camera every time. Woo! Pretty fun.
Make your contribution as best you can. Ahaan, as we go forward, we look into the future for 2022. What do you think is the biggest move the Red Sox make this offseason?
In terms of how big the Red Sox get in the offseason, so the first name I've been hearing a lot is move Bogaerts to second base so we can sign Carlos Correa. I like making the calls early. Carlos Correa goes to Detroit. That's my call. They have to pay the man. The Astros have to pay the man to keep him. I think he gets paid a hefty amount. I just don't think that's the kind of guy Chaim Bloom is, to make that kind of a splash and not address depth in the bullpen, which ties in with the Matt Barnes point. Matt Barnes' workload gets helped if you get some depth in the bullpen and you can stay away from him sometimes. That's why I want a guy like Raisel Iglesias instead. So I anticipate a bunch of good moves instead of one splash. I think Raisel Iglesias is probably going to be my top target in terms of like a splash we can make, but I also wouldn't rule out the possibility of making a significant trade in the offseason for a catcher like Mitch Garver. The Twins are trying to trade their solid players to rebuild. They're doing a good job rebuilding, so I think they stick with that. And they have two guys that would be great fits on the Red Sox, Mitch Garver and Taylor Rogers out of the bullpen. So I would anticipate Chaim Bloom to be at least involved in exploring that kind of a trade.
Eric, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ahaan.
No, yeah, so bottom line, I think, by the way, Jose Iglesias does come back, but we make, I'd say, like 5 to 6 impactful moves, like moves that will be reported heavily, none of which on the $20+ million or higher range.
Eric, I'll ask you the same question. What do you think the big move will be this offseason?
I got two things they gotta fix. They gotta fix the starting rotation. There's at least two players they're looking for, I would think. And unless probably two players they're looking for to fill that up there. I hope they don't spend $10 million like they did on Richards again. Now, though, I don't expect him to do that again. The second thing, because the pitching overachieved the first half and then kind of floundered in the second half. And you saw basically the exact same thing started happening in the postseason, right? You just really crossing your fingers every time one of your starting rotations was up there. The second thing was the streaky offense. So it was kind of up and down all year, right? And they need to figure out a way to put that lineup together so it's a little bit more stable. And with so much of a turnover in the free agent area, I think we have a lot of room to, like you said, fill up the bullpen with a bunch of arms, some quality stuff. We need to do something with starting rotation, and they need to make sure they got a little bit better set up in their lineup so there's not just 1, 2, 3, and then nothing more happens. I don't like the back of our lineup at all with a bat in their hand for quite a while. So that needs to get a little bit more solid, whether it's rotating certain positions or whatever they're going to do. So that's what I expect. That's what they're going to be hunting.
For me, and I'll circle back to pretty much where we started, JD Martinez with player option here. I think a lot happens with what they do with him. And depending upon what happens with him, I think Bobby Dahlbeck, and I hate to say this, I think he's going to get traded. Because I think they're going to try to bring Cassis up at some point next season. And I just have this sinking feeling because I enjoyed watching him figure it out as he started to improve towards the middle of the season when he hit that hot streak. That he was a lot of fun to watch. He also, I think, improved defensively. But if there was one player that I thought as watching the season, if they were going to make a move, Bobby Dahlbeck, I think, would be the guy. So I hate to say it, but I'll be very surprised. Again, a lot depends on what happens with JD and maybe to a lesser extent Schwarber. But Dahlbeck is the one for me. So, gentlemen, I want to thank you for your time this afternoon. We've had a wonderful season. It didn't end the way we had hoped for the Red Sox, but certainly, I had picked them at 85 wins tops, and they certainly improved on that and got themselves to within just two wins away from the 2021 World Series. So enjoy the World Series. Ahaan, Eric, thanks for joining me today, and we hope you continue to read us at redsoxlife.com.